Alright, it's summer now, so it's gonna be content galore and extra long videos, starting with everything I watched in May. And I started this month off with The Fall Guy. And funny enough, I think I have talked about this before, maybe on Furiosa, but I thought it was alright. I still think David Leitch directed a better film in Bullet Train, which also starred Aaron Taylor-Johnson. Was surprised to see him on here till watching the trailers after and see that it wasn't something that they hid. I would have loved to have seen them actually get like a stunt performer to play the role of Aaron. I think it could have made the whole irony of his character play out way better. But for me, the entire story of the film is pretty dumb. But that's a story for another day. Just want to say that this is not a streaming film. It's a proper cinema movie. But I think maybe that's a bit debatable. But this is definitely a movie that 100% should premiere at a movie theater. It just shouldn't have had a balloon budget like that. Then I watched the Ape film, starting with Rise. And this is probably my favorite one alongside War. Just great to see the rise of Caesar and understand his backstory and him growing up as a domestic smart ape to be this leader and now this religious figure in these later movies. Also helps that Andy Serkis is just phenomenal in that role. No! Bit mad I missed all the foreshadowing for the future films in the original viewing that I watched like a couple years ago. And I found it funny that there's this one scene that Caesar gets the Owls 113 gas thing, and it just looks a bit reminiscent to that one Rick and Morty episode.
Where are my testicles, Summer?
Although the second film is in this weird bubble for me, as it bridges the gap between the first and the last one, as all the apes are smart and it loses that spark and weight that the first film had. And as it's not the war film, it's more of the introduction to the war film. It doesn't have that weight that the third film had. So would simply just say it's a good filler story, but that's really a huge disservice to this movie. As I actually thought this was the first one I watched like back maybe 5 years ago. I can't remember, I'm guessing numbers. But I feel like this movie can easily be consumed as its own thing, and I think Matt Reeves did an amazing job on here given the circumstances. War, on the other hand, was simply as magnificent as I remember, and I still hold dearly all that emotion, and it's definitely a movie made with a ton of care and does show, especially in the end, to just stick everything perfectly. And all the movies, including this one, it just like gave this final film the right. It earned that right to have that ending, to just cap off the trilogy. Finally, I watched Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and I already have a video on this, and I love it as much as the Caesar trilogy, but I want to correct myself on some stuff I messed up in that review. I said 1,000 years instead of 300. Makes my little critique of that movie a bit rubbish now, but I usually try to avoid like all the promotion for films. I shouldn't be making that kind of mistake. It's still a good film though. I did watch The Planet of the Apes before watching Kingdom, so I'm going to talk about that too. And this movie surprised me a lot. I really loved it, especially as it's a 1968 film, and I think this is the joint oldest film I've watched now. Here comes the tomatoes. I'm not a true cinephile, but hey, I love backlash, and here comes my hot take. This is a better film than 2001: A Space Odyssey. Narratively, at least. 2001 was ahead of its time. It's gorgeous and everything, but it was just so boring. This, on the other hand, was fun from the start to the end. To be fair, there were parts in the middle that were like that took me out a bit, I can't lie, but as an entire experience, I had way much enjoyable time watching Planet of the Apes than 2001: A Space Odyssey. And speaking of being a cinephile, I watched The Dreamers, and I wish I had that movie knowledge that these guys have. Besides that, the rest of them can keep that life to themselves, because what on earth is going on in this movie? Movie has pretty imagery, I will give them that, but where's the story for Michael, man? There's no love for Michael. Michael was like, he has all the screen on time, but like we barely get anything personally from him. We don't know why he pees and sings. We don't know why he loves film. Film majorly focuses on this strange relationship between these siblings. I love Evergreen, and she's the reason why I watched this movie.
I know what kind of man you are.
But she was just used as a pointless sexual device in this. And if I was French, I'll probably hate this movie. I don't know, it just feels such a weird, sex-driven movie. And continuing this trend of weird relationships, I watched Igby Goes Down. And he truly went down, with these two girls being his romantic interest. Like, he's hitting on his godfather's girlfriend. And I definitely missed the point of this film, but Igby was so unbearable. Like, I hated him throughout this film. And it was never the sense of seeing his view or his points. Like, he was just an eyesore throughout this movie and throughout the entire runtime. Like, just be a nepo baby, man. Just be a nepo baby and do something with your life. And so a character I adore is Tom Cruise's Joey Goodson in Risky Business. Talk about a way to put your name out there in Hollywood. But on a rewatch, this film was shorter than I remember. And he also felt a bit weird with his structure. Like one moment he's reluctantly telling Lana and her friend to leave. Yeah, I get like he has that whole thing that happens to his car and he gets into the lake. But the movie just changes to him setting up this brothel in his father's house. All of that just happens within a few days. From my memory, I just felt like everything was a bit more spaced out, but shout out Joe Pantalito. Never realized he was in this movie. I probably butchered his name, definitely butchered his name, but shout out him. I didn't even realize that was him till I just saw the cast right now. And speaking of him, I watched the Bad Boys Trilogy, and also I didn't even mention this in the video about the film, but it was weird to watch that last film because that was my first time watching Bad Boys for Life when I did that video. But I saw the trailer for Bad Boys 4, so this is a spoiler for Bad Boys for Life, I guess. He dies on that movie. So I thought he was gonna be like, there was gonna be like a cop out of him like being, oh no, he somehow survived. But I watched the trailer again when I was watching Furiosa and I saw that he didn't actually die. So yeah, let's have a video on that though. If you want to know my opinions of Bad Boys, all the Bad Boys film, just watch that video. And speaking of Furiosa, I also watched that actually, and I liked it. It still holds up as one of the better films I've watched this year, but I understand the criticism. I always messed that word up. But I get that the CGI did not look great, and I definitely noticed some areas, but I would be lying if it affected my entire experience of the movie. I'm not somebody that always goes searching scene by scene. I understand sometimes it's just jarring to look at, but for me, it didn't affect me too much, and that's all I can give you. I can only give you my opinion, and I love the movie. The CGI, I didn't really notice it, only in some specific moments, but still a good film visually to look at, and it's so pretty. Go watch my video on my thoughts on that. I also watched original Mad Max ahead of Furiosa, and I didn't like this movie that much, but I also have a video about this that I talked about it not really extensively, but I talked about it there. And I also paired it up with another film I watched, which was Who Killed Captain Alex. Yes, it's a weird comparison, but you have to hear me out on that video. And speaking of Africa, I watched a film that took place in Africa technically. I don't think they went on location, but it says it takes place in Africa. The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, dumb name. And although it's one of the more boring Guy Ritchie films I have watched since maybe The Wrath of Man, I was entertained by some sorts, and it was fun to learn something like this actually existed, but to some degree, of course. But my main issue was that this film was just too exposition heavy.
Read, nigga, read!
Especially at the start, and it also did not do enough to distinguish between the characters, and they felt very shallow. I could never get invested in them, resulting to only knowing like Henry and Richardson's character, and that's only because it's Henry Cavill and Alan Richardson. But I would give this movie props because they did PG-13 action really, really well. I also watched Shake Shack this month because I heard it was alright on TikTok, and whoever lied to me, I hope your idiot's brain is getting screwed by stupid. And no, that was not rhetorical. Moose was the best character in this film, and so the fact that they did not like support the film around him or make him the main character was just dumb for me, because I couldn't really care less for the other guy. And another thing I didn't like about the movie was just its way of throwing cheap emotions at me. Like, that has to be the worst I've seen it in a long time. Just like, I hate when movies do that. You just kill a character for like, oh, you're supposed to feel sad. Like, bro, I don't care about that guy that died. But from one film about white people to a film about black people, and I watched the Book of Clarence, and that Jesus reveal, very underwhelming. No offense to Nicholas Pinnock, but I don't know your name, I'm sorry. After all that foreshadowing, I was expecting a bigger actor, because it was like, who are you? Before he does his Matrix Neo impression. Truly do not know if I should be mad at this film or not. I thought personally it was a below average film. The opening was horrifically slow and boring, and opposed to the consensus I see, I actually prefer the movie's ending. And the film is also directed by that same guy that did The Harder They Fall, and that film and this film, they suffer from that same problem I have. It's a bunch of great ideas not carried by a good narrative, and it just ends up being an awful movie. And that's my unbiased Christian review. My biased Christian review, this film is straight up blasphemy at times, and I hate it for that.
Stop it! Breathe through your damn mouth!
Then Hollywood really be pushing the boundaries with Jesus lately, because I watched Immaculate. No spoilers, this movie is dumb. And it's honestly everything I hate about horror films. Sorry, I mean horror films that are centered around like a church or Christianity in general. They're super generic and dull. Like, aren't we tired of seeing stuff like this? Well, at least I am. That's why I never watch movies like this. But I was just like, okay, let me give this a chance because, you know, Sydney Sweeney. And shout out Sydney. This was her best performance this year in anything. But I mean, props to the movie for trying something different, even though majority of it is just the same thing we've seen many times. But I watched Late Night with the Devil, and this is how you do a horror film. Although I was not the biggest lover of this movie, it was a fun, thrilling watch with a lot of the same horror tropes, but like they just added some cool stuff. Like the whole late night show aesthetic was amazing. Like I just thought it was cool how they did it in the way that it's shot like a late night show. Then it switched to some of like the behind the scenes and they made it like black and white to like set it in this particular era or tone. I feel like it just gave you more of this sense of feeling like you were there experiencing like a true life event. But realistically, as soon as I see that chair levitating, I'm dashing out. Also, I watched Love Lives Bleeding this month with Kristen Stewart. See, I actually like this film. Okay, this is probably my favorite LGBTQ film plus this year. Shout out Pride Month. But I can't lie, I also watched this film really early in May, so I barely remember anything about it. Like I remember the movie, but like I didn't really take notes for it, and I just wanted to enjoy it, which I did. So forgive me for not having a lot to talk about it. But I will say I was confused by parts of the movie, like the ending, the big ending, I guess, with the power of love. Ed Harris though was really great in this. I love the makeup on him, or maybe that was just a normal look for Ed. Either way, it's pretty impressive. And yet Kristen Stewart, as much as I'm not her biggest fan, I will admit she surprised me in this role. But please do not be inviting strangers to your house. Like maybe for the one night stand, sure, but like to live with you after that, come on, you're inviting danger. At least you guys fell in love though. And then I watched Think Like a Man for the first time. Not the first time, but like this was the first movie I've watched with friends in a long time. I know how that sounds. Okay, just leave me alone. But yeah, this is honestly one of my favorite comedies over the years. I know I have a bunch of comedies I like, but this is probably like, I don't know, because it was me that chose the movie. So I was like, all right, let's watch a fun movie. I mean, Netflix didn't have a ton of the movies I wanted to watch with them at first, but like, you know, I saw this and I was like, oh yeah, Think Like a Man. It's a fun film. I love it. Kevin Hart's here. This is Kevin Hart at his prime. He was just fun. It's an experience, you know. It's just a let loose, chill film. I will say this movie has no business being 2 hours long. I mean, cut out 15 minutes. Let this be an hour and 45. Apart from that, it was such a fun time. I don't care what you say. I enjoyed myself while watching this. And I also watched another comedy this month, and this surprised me because I never watched the original Mean Girls. So going into this was just blind basically, and I really don't know if that was a smart decision, because if the original is better, that means the original has to be a really good film, because this was pretty okay. And quick disclaimer, I have watched the original before because I have a sister. I've seen glimpses of it. I've not watched it from like at length, but I've seen parts of it. Like when the bus hits her, I knew that was gonna happen, but story for another day. But I can't lie, hiding the fact that this movie was musical is a bit vile. I cannot I can't explain it, because like that's the worst part of the movie, when as soon as they open their mouths to sing, it just disconnects you from the entire film. But I will admit the dance choreography for most of the scenes were really good, particularly that scene where they were doing the Halloween thing. I think it was excellent there. That was probably one of my favorite musical numbers. And shout out to Avantika Vanab. Oh my goodness. Shout out her though, because with that face, I need to see you in everything I watch. I'm concluding this month with a high school film again. I watched that YouTube short film, Nothing Except Everything. See, I watched this on YouTube, so when on my initial viewing, I only watched this once. So on my only viewing, I expected YouTube quality, and I was served YouTube quality, and I thought it was alright. I saw the comments on YouTube, and then you see the comments on Letterboxd. The difference, the disparity, it's crazy. But unbiased on everything, like on Phase Review, I thought it was decent for a YouTube short, you know. I don't think it's festival worthy. Like props to the guy for getting that one director to like produce his movie, but it's a good YouTube video, and it had me questioning my past, present, and future. And finally for the month, I watched all 16. Okay, but at time of recording, I actually just watched 14, but probably I'll finish 16 before the end of the month. I watched all 16 DC New 52 animated movies from Flashpoint to Apocalypse Score for a special video I have planned. This is probably like a passion project, so I don't know when it's going to come out this month, but it's going to come out in June, hopefully. Content for June is actually stacked. There's a lot of movies coming out June. There's a lot of TV shows coming out June. And speaking of TV shows, nothing came out in May, so I didn't really watch anything. All I did was rewatch The Boys, and I've already talked about The Boys at length in other everything I watched last year. So I'm not really going to talk too much about it. All I'll say is, it's definitely one of my favorite. No, this is not one of. This is my favorite TV show of all time, considering how many times I've rewatched it, and I just love it each and every time. But yeah, that just wraps it up with everything I watched in May. Thank you for watching. Hopefully my next video should be Bad Boys. See you then. Peace.
Baby, I'm too clean. You could look, but please don't touch.
Hello, Joel. I'm Jackie. How are you this evening?